Hey, it's Tiffany and Cindy, your two poly chicks again.
Hi guys.
We're here. Hopefully I can stay more focused this video. I was really having one of those days. It's the same day, but new taping.
Same day, guys, same day.
We didn't wear the same clothes. It's the same day. But we just wanted to go ahead and touch on the Supreme Court's cases, the judicial branch, which has the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the land, which litigates cases on the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution, and any laws that conflict with either the Constitution or the amendments. What it says on the Supreme Court building is equal justice under the law. And so that's what the Supreme Court should always strive to achieve, is equal justice under the law. So what we wanted to do was just talk about some current cases. And I really don't feel like we can talk about current cases without talking about the voting rights. We didn't touch on that too much with our last video, but voting rights, even though, in 1869, African Americans received the right to vote. And there were grandfather clauses, which if your grandfather could vote, then you could vote. But if you were a slave, you probably weren't able to vote. And most of the time, depending on if you were a mulatto or whatever, they still didn't acknowledge your grandfather as being who he was. So the grandfather clause stopped a lot of the voting. Then there was the poll tax. There were a few things that led up to the Civil Rights Voting Rights Act, which Lyndon B. Johnson had signed, and it just continuously gets extended. But right now, there's so many challenges to the Voting Rights Act, and there's so many issues with the voting rights that little by little it's being chipped away. Like you have And one of the significant things that we talked about, or that we should talk about, is the pre-clearance. There was, before the states themselves could change laws to the voting rights or voting access, they would have to get pre-clearance from the courts. Now they've done away with that. So you see states little by little enacting certain things that we feel are unfair or they affect minorities a little more than they affect the majority. And that's a big problem. So you have, and I don't know, the ID laws, I really don't understand how the ID, maybe you can help me understand this, how the ID law affects people, because I would think that everyone has an ID to identify who they are. So how does that franchise people?
I think what they were talking about was, number one, voting is a right, constitutional right. So why do I then have to give all of this identification?
How would you know who you are?
Right. So I did hear somebody making that argument, like voting is a right. But then they have, like, I guess not everybody has a driver's license.
So you have an ID,
yeah. So then you got to now go and get other ID. Plus, if you are, I guess if you are I think I saw a lot to do with prison, like people that came out of jail. More than ID, it was like people that came out of jail, their rights were being violated. Once you served your time and did everything you were supposed to do, they were taking those rights away. But with the identification, the only argument I heard was that it's a right given to you. So how come it's so much behind it with identification and stuff like that? Although I did see, how can I prove that it's me?
Right. How do you prove, if I walk into a voting booth, how do I prove that I'm Tiffany? How do I prove that? You show an identification issued by the state or the government. Right. Otherwise, anyone can come in and say, I'm Tiffany, and vote for me. So
well, what I did hear them saying was they're booting people off the rolls. So like if you don't vote for several elections or whatever, in certain states like Texas, big states that are known for suppressing. Yeah. If you choose, I mean, we know like minority population, especially Black men, are not voting in the same numbers as women tend to vote more, Black women. So if you choose for 5 years, 10 years not to vote, and then you say, oh, we have a black, I want to vote for that guy, and you go to try to vote, they bumped you off the rolls. Basically, you don't exist.
Oh, wow.
So now you got to go through this whole ID process to prove who you are again.
But I agree with that, because to me, how else do you prove who you are? So I don't,
Right.
I know people see that as restrictive and, oh, well, this is another way to stop us from voting, but I don't see where you can go without having an ID to show who you are. Now, the type of ID, I guess that can be debated, like whether or not it's issued from the state or the federal government. But I mean, to have an ID, I think you should have an ID to vote.
But doesn't it depend on what the original intent of like, what did they have to do originally to be able to vote? So that's what I'm saying. Like, if it's a changeover, if you're making it more strict, if you're saying, okay, now you got an ID, a signature, a picture, a fingerprint, like, we can still continue to make it more restrictive by requiring you to do more to prove who you are.
Right. You know what I mean? Not just something with your face, name, and signature. That's something that I think should be the minimum.
Right.
I can't just come in and say I'm Tiffany with no documentation, and that means anyone can be Tiffany. So that's where I feel like a lot of people do see or have a suspicion that voter fraud could happen when you don't have anything to show who these people are that would be voting. But then
I saw something with duplicate names. Guys, I'm a little chilly. I'm gonna get my blanket. I'm sorry. I'm a little chilly. Chilly, I don't know. It's so cold all of a sudden.
You said the duplicate names?
Yeah, they had something with, they were trying to say, you heard this thing about dead people voting now, and they were talking about people that had the same name. If you and I had the same name, and now you're gonna like invalidate my vote because it's gonna look like I voted twice. Meanwhile, there's another person with my exact name.
Don't they have date of birth as well? Because they have all of that.
They were talking about, that was one of the big issues that I saw with I don't know. I'm trying to remember on my ballot. Is my date of birth on there?
Your date of birth is on your it's first of all, I know in Florida we have a voter ID number, and then you also have your date of birth, you have your signature on your little voter registration card.
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. I see my signature, my address, and my district, this stuff information. But I don't know.
The cross-reference.
Yeah, but that's what they're saying. They're booting people who, like right now, they just interviewed a lady. She had her husband's last name, but some people put, let's say his name was John Smith, and I put Mrs. John Smith.
Yeah.
They're saying John Smith voted twice, but it's my husband, and he's dead.
And she's always voted that way.
She always voted Mrs. She's old-fashioned maybe. She put Mrs. John Smith, and that's how she always voted. But this year they're on a hunt, so they're trying to prove dead people are voting. But she's like, yeah, my husband's dead, but I'm also Mrs. So-and-so, So so I did see that kind of stuff with identifying who people are.
Okay. And I mean, those things, the early voting and early registration access, those were coming up a lot. So this, voting rights is one of the most litigated issues in when it comes to like the Supreme Court and I forgot the amendment that it's under. Is it the 14th Amendment?
Which one? 14th Amendment is the right to vote. 13th ended slavery. 14th is the right to vote. I forgot what the 15th is, but
And that's one of the most litigated. I mean, you have so many variations to the Voting Rights Act. You have so many extensions and additions and subtractions that it's. I mean, I always say this has to be important if it's a continuous.
We're not a democracy. We're not. I'm gonna say it probably in every video at least once. This is not a true democracy, people. This is not a true democracy. It really isn't. When there's so much under, like you said, under the voting rights issue. And now, because our technology is changing and because our population of voters are getting younger, they're trying to make it even more restrictive. So now mail-in ballot is going to be, but can you imagine some people are saying, can you now, we should let people vote online. Should we let you vote online?
Why? I mean, you have thumbprint or fingerprint access to your bank records. You have fingerprint access to so many things.
We have a chip, right? We have the chip.
So, I mean, why not? And it's already proven this year that if you make it easier for people to vote, they will vote.
But they don't want that.
Yeah, we know that. So, I mean, but that's why it's a continual issue with the Supreme Court and being decided on how, and like I said, that last blow of not having the states not have to receive pre-clearance to change voter access laws, it was a blow, because then they could determine what they needed to, how they wanted to do their elections, and who and how they wanted to have people have access to vote.
But can you imagine you stood online during a pandemic for 9 hours only to have your vote kicked out?
No.
And there was lines. Let's see, election happened last Tuesday. On Friday was the deadline for Georgia and I think Nevada to come in and cure what they call their voting issue. So if you went in to vote and they informed you later that your signature didn't match or whatever, or something happened, you needed to bring your identification, something happened with you, you had until Friday to come in. This is after election was already done. Election day was done. Yeah. And those lines were long. Those lines were long and people were coming in. Can you imagine? You go through all of that and then they tell you for some reason they didn't accept your vote. They didn't accept your vote.
That would suck.
Like, that's class action right there, lawsuit. Class action lawsuit.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the current things that's going on right now that people should be aware of. And just when it's brought to the Supreme Court, as I'm pretty sure it'll be back before the Supreme Court, we should pay a lot of attention to. The other thing actually that just recently happened was the DACA, the Deferred Action.
Oh yeah.
So what happens, you have illegal immigrants come into the country and they have kids that are young, and those kids, let's say you're a year old or a few months old, you're brought here, and then you've lived here all your life. You don't speak another language. You only speak English. You only know America as your home, and you're still illegal for all intents and purposes, but this is your home. So what the law was to do was to provide like a safe haven for people that fell under that criteria. And it wasn't just, okay, everyone could stay. You had to be contributing in some way, or you have to meet certain standards. And the reason it's up right now, well, there's a few reasons, but right now there's a lot of healthcare workers that are under the deferred action, the DACA, or the dreamers. Let's call them the dreamers, because what most people know them as. There's people that served in the military that are dreamers. So when you say, okay, let's get rid of that program and kick everyone out, it's like, well, how much damage are you doing to the country by doing this? And just recently, Chad Wolf, which was the acting Department of Homeland Security chief, he actually stopped under the Trump administration. He stopped that program, but he did not have the right, because he wasn't legally, he was an acting, so he wasn't legally the DHS chief. So they actually, whatever he put in place to stop it was invalidated because he wasn't the legal person. So the Dreamer program is still alive and well and still being looked at. And it grants temporary protection from deportation for people that meet that criteria. So I mean, in some ways I agree. I'm always like somewhere in the middle on things, because in some ways I agree that when someone is brought here not knowing, like I can take Donnie anywhere and he doesn't have any say so over where he ends up. Right. But how do you uproot his entire life after he's been somewhere? But at the same time, they were brought here illegally. So how do you have it as a, what do you call it? What's the word for it when you, not a distraction, but a deterrent? How do you have it as a deterrent when you are accepting people that have been brought here illegally? So it's like,
and how far does it go? I mean, it's cruel. I'm in school. When I was a teacher, I taught many kids who weren't here legally. because in the school system, you're not allowed to ask those kind of questions. But they can't apply to college. Now, on the college level, when they need funding to go to college, that's when it became an issue. Yep. So we had like 12th graders getting ready to go to college. That's when their parents' status, their parents didn't file tax returns. Their parents didn't want to put their names on any of their documentation to get them in school. So then it became a problem. But like, we don't ask you that when you're in school and you come to the building and register. They don't ask you that. You know, right. So it's like, how far does this, I mean, it's just what, you know, what's being said always, what's always on the ballot, which is making a path to citizenship.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of just saying everybody out and we don't, because listen, who's indigenous to this country?
We all are.
Yeah, exactly. Brown people are the originals of the country. So, y'all are all visiting. Like when they're always telling people, go back to your country, I say, so why don't we all, you can go back to your country. We all should go, let's all go back to our country then, because who was born here? Like, who was originally here?
Yeah,
like,
nobody.
You're not
really.
originally here.
But at the same time, and this is where the Supreme Court will have to find a balance. And I mean, they've decided that, you know, it was to stay around, but you also have to figure out how you can discourage people from entering illegally, aside from asylum seekers. But you don't want to encourage bad behaviors either. So it's like a catch-22. You want to keep people because of the circumstances that they were brought in under, but then you don't want to encourage new people from coming in and taking advantage of the system that they know exists. So I'm glad I don't have to decide on.
And people are also complaining like jobs are being stolen by, not that you were going to be doing the jobs that people who come here are doing. Like you literally think, because they do the task that nobody wants to do, right? They're doing the waitressing job, the busing job, the service jobs, and backpacking, all those kind of jobs. And you're talking about they're stealing our jobs. Okay.
Well, I don't know anyone that can give a specific reference to where they've applied for a job and an illegal person actually got the job instead of them. But at the same time, I don't want to say that they're, you know, I don't want to generalize and say that I mean, the majority do work in service industries, but then you also have a lot, like I said, in the military, in the healthcare field, that are look at the doctors that are and people only think of Latinos when they think of illegal immigrants, but you have a lot of people from Asia,
West Indians. You have a lot of West Indians in the medical. The school one of the schools that I was in, the illegal immigrants here, illegal aliens here were West Indian.
Yeah.
And the students in there were like paranoid. Please don't call, you know, you couldn't invite them to parent conferences because it'd be like, you know, like that was before ISIS.
Yeah.
That was before ISIS. I know, right?
Every time you say it, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
But, and that creates a lot of fear, and it creates a lot of avenues for abuse for those people as well. But like I said, I just don't want people to feel that it's not a general only Latinos. It's not.
Absolutely not.
Of Asian people, there's a lot
not.
African people. There's a lot of Middle Eastern people that are here.
Yeah. There's a lot of European, but Europeans seem to get this exotic. Like you're Italian or you're from Spain. You know, so those are not the places of color. It's usually the places of color that you feel like, oh, they're immigrant. You know, so Asian and Hispanics are usually the ones you target, and mostly Hispanic. You really a target when you feel like immigrant. But like you said, in the other area because I taught in several different schools, so the other one was mainly Asian.
Yeah.
That came here.
And they would apply for that program. So they were born here at 2 years old, and they were brought from, let's say, China or Vietnam or somewhere. They would apply for that program and receive protection under that program. So that's why I just always want to say we can't generalize and say or think. I don't want people to think that the DACA or the Dreamers are only a specific set. There's a lot of people that benefit from that program, and there's a lot that goes into litigating it and figuring out what the right way is to carry on and the right way to correct it. So I think that's just one of the other current cases. And then now the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. I mean, I guess they named it Obamacare because it seems
it's under him. He sponsored the bill.
Like,
so, yeah.
oh no, this is such a horrible thing. But the Affordable Care Act, I just wrote in my notes, why not healthcare? Like, I don't understand
it's socialism. It's socialism.
To have people have access to doctors.
Well, it's so they feel like it's you know.
No, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I'm like,
no, I'm trying to. God, I get so angry. I get so angry at certain things. You're such a hypocrite. You can bail out airlines. You can bail out the real estate industry. You can bail out banks. You can bail out the motor industry. You can bail out the farmers.
Taking care of someone's health.
Yeah, that's socialism. That's a step. That's a bridge too far to give people. Well, the problems with Obamacare was that there was a mandate, so you could be penalized for not having health coverage. So our country tends to use buzzwords like communism and socialism, meaning social programs, without realizing that we pretty much have a lot of socialism going on right now. We have welfare. How about that? All the bailouts of the businesses. How about that? That's giving money to people, right? And on top of that, for free. And on top of that, to quote Governor Cuomo, he said, listen, we bail you out. Like we pay more in taxes than, California, the big states pay more in taxes. California, New York pay every portion of the taxes in the country. So when we tell you to give us, we asking you for our money. We're telling you to give us our money. We need it for something. Yeah. So welfare programs, Head Start, and all those things, they try to say you're giving handouts. You're giving handouts to these poor people who don't want to work. And
I feel that everyone should work. If
you should work. You should work.
If you're incapacitated, then that's where those programs would come in.
Yeah, but you can't cry. But then what do we cry when we hear businesses getting bailouts? First of all, businesses got those PPP loans when the coronavirus first happened, and they did the stimulus package, and they did the business bailout, not bailouts, helping people in businesses that were struggling. Multi-million-dollar companies were getting some of the money, while small businesses, beauty salons and stuff were having to clamor to prove why they needed the money. But we don't cry socialism then. Or the airlines, we want to bail out the airlines. We want to bail out the motor company. Obama bailed out the motor companies and the banks and stuff instead of people that lost their houses. I was furious. We don't cry socialism then, right?
Because and I know the whole argument is supposed to be that those big companies will do what's right and help it trickle down to the individuals, which we know that never happens.
That ain't happening. It's just like Cuomo said.
Yeah, it works in the opposite way. Usually, you give money to the consumer, they will consume and spend more money. So, I mean, like I said, to me, why not healthcare? Why not?
Right.
I understand the controversy behind everyone being able to have something to where if they got sick,
right,
or when they get sick, because I mean, you can't.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, you will not remain healthy your entire life. Otherwise, you'll probably never die. So you know, I mean, you know that you are going to get sick one day and need assistance. Even if you don't get sick, what about the well-care visits? What about the eye exams? Things that.
What about COVID? What about COVID?
Oh yeah.
How about that? Right now, how about that pandemic that we didn't have nothing to do with? How about that?
Yeah. And right now, I will say that with the what was it? The ACA, they did indicate that it's still going on even without the mandate. So the mandate, they tried to argue that the mandate itself dismantled Obamacare, but we know that the mandate has been it's been nullified as of 2017.
Right, they got rid of it.
So for 2 years, it's still going on, and people are still enrolling, and people are still loving it. And actually, you're having more of a positive view on Obamacare than negative. And that's why they're saying you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
But just look at this. Just look how stupid. Just look how stupid this is. I'm gonna get rid of healthcare. What's gonna happen? The sick people won't have any. If you don't have health coverage, you're gonna be turned away from it. That raises tax dollars. Taxpayers will eventually have to pay for it somehow to cover people that don't have through welfare, Medicaid, Medicare. You're still gonna wind up. So let the government pay for it. Let the government or government fund it somehow or fix it. But they really are lacking in understanding. Let's just call it that. I don't. Yeah. I want to call them something really mean.
Yeah, and that it is a little frustrating, and I'm always curious to figure out why it's such a controversial issue.
It's for poor people. When you give poor people things, people have a problem with it. But
well, like, you have to pay for your health care. It's not something that's actually given.
But they don't want anything that smells and reeks of socialism. Socialism, like in Canada, health coverage is free, right? So in communist countries, you know, they pay for the people to do whatever. They feel like it's overstepping almost into taking away our capitalism. It's a step toward taking away capitalism and the free market system where everybody paid it, you know, free market. So you make money, you spend money, you do what you got to do. But if the government is constantly giving you things, then
well, is the government really giving you something when
no
saying you need to have health care? You need to pay for your
I think government mandated because it was the real issue with Obamacare was the 10th Amendment, which is the right of states to make laws, and states govern healthcare. So the federal government does not have the right to mandate anything because that's really a state matter. So states really sued to get this, you know, states really said, that's not, you're overstepping. That's it'd be like somebody coming in your house and making a rule for your son. You'd be like, you're overstepping.
There's still a lot of laws and there's a lot of things that are federal.
Right.
Like taxes, for one, you pay federal taxes. That's a federal mandate. The Voting Rights Act is a federal mandate.
Right.
So you can't say
constitutionally, the 10th Amendment, health coverage falls under the state. Elections fall under the state. That's not a federal thing. The federal government is state laws that govern elections. It's state laws that govern citizens' healthcare.
You have a federal mandate to institute those actions. So if there's a federal mandate to say, hey, you have to allow your citizens to have healthcare, then yeah, just like with the Brown versus Education and all of those other cases, you leave it up to the states to institute it, but there's an overall federal mandate to say, hey, this is what you should do.
But remember, when he did it, he gave penalties to citizens who didn't have it.
Right, so, and they got rid of that. So
yeah. But you know, the gist of going after Obamacare was really going after Obama. It wasn't about the healthcare at that point. It was dismantling anything that he did. It was let's get rid of that guy. It was like repudiation for him actually being born. It was like he was born and he became president of us. Are you kidding me? We're gonna undo even good things that he did. There's laws right now. They went after get this one. They went after a law that he had on the books to save the environment. You can't dump oil into certain areas. So there was a case of not a case, but there was a story of a woman, I think it was in Kentucky, a husband and wife had bought this land specifically because it was on a pond and they wanted to fish. And now they can't because so much pollution is dumped into their water. They can't eat the fish that's in the pond. That was under Obama. That was like regulations under him to say you can only do so much. And so now their value of their property is useless.
Right. You don't no one likes regulations where it's too restrictive, but I mean, it's just, like I said, I'm always amazed at the things that don't concern people, but the things that do concern people, it's just like, and so on the flip I don't know if it's on the flip side, but one thing I do want to say is Thurgood Marshall he was appointed through the NAACP on that Brown case, and he was the first African American Supreme Court justice. I neglected to say that in our previous
You all guys, she was all moody and stuff.
Yeah, when you don't eat, or when you it's early in the morning, and like I said, I couldn't get myself together. But with
feelings, she was all in her feelings.
Some of the things that people are fearful of being taken away are the gay marriage rights and the the right to choose. So those are things that the public feels are about to be litigated in the court. And the one thing with Roe, it was a right to privacy. It was a right to privacy, and the courts had a hard time deciding between state regulatory interests and the woman's right to
the 10th Amendment.
Yeah, her own health care. So that was basically what that one is about. So they also discussed the viability of the fetus, and then they allow the states to regulate. So the allowance of the state to regulate means that they can restrict certain access. They can make doctors have admitting privileges, or they can have certain criteria that the people need to meet that may almost nullify it altogether, where you cannot seek the right to choose, or you don't have access to choose. So that's been going on, and it's almost like they're saying that it's about to what's the word for it? I can't find my words today.
It's restricted. They're restricting. They're restricting the limit. So what they can't do is they can't totally. Well, I guess they could reverse on a decision that they made. But what they don't tend to do is reverse. What they tend to do is restrict it more and more.
Yep.
So at first you had a right to an abortion if you were in the window of the state, but then they started taking away more of it. You have a right to that, but only if this amount of time. Yeah, you have a right to that, but only if you do it with this health coverage. Yeah, you have so it just continues to go this way until the right is only in cases of where you were molested or you were raped and you had a baby. So
and some of the problems that they had with Amy Coney Barrett is that the justices on the court make up a healthy conservative majority.
It's 7-2 or something like that.
And so people are afraid that with those values in their head, that they'll continuously rule against what's already been. And like you said, when you have restrictions on where, how, who, they had a heartbeat law in one state. And I mean, it's controversial, but to me, I always feel on this subject, I mean, I have my own personal view of it, but I also feel that no one is forcing you to have an abortion. No one is forcing you to go and do this. So if you feel that you should not have an abortion, then you should not have an abortion. But on the other side, so when you say the woman's right to choose, you're taking away a choice from someone else. And that's where the issue comes. And that's where the viability of life. When does life begin? That's the question. So
and at one point they even had laws where you couldn't even give contraception.
Yeah.
So you don't want me to have contraception, and you don't want me to get rid of the child if I get one.
Well, guess what? Men are usually the ones that's making these laws. Women,
is Kamala Harris said that.
we should keep the power of the power of the I'm just gonna say it. We should keep the power of the pussy to ourselves, because if you're making all these laws to restrict how and when and what we do with our bodies, then I'm sorry. Sorry. Let me just...
I said, what?
Well, it's true, because you're making all these laws about our bodies. And it's almost like, well, you don't know what it takes to go through. So, and it's
can you imagine if they force a man to have a vasectomy? Can you imagine? Yeah. There's a law in the books that if your wife demands it, you have to have it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Can you imagine?
You know what? After having Donovan and having my stomach cut open, I got my tubes tied. But before having him, and, you know, having everything, you know, all the stuff that goes along with having children, I asked David, you know, why don't you get a vasectomy? So then that way we won't have any more children. This won't ever happen again. He fought tooth and nail about that. But
I had the same conversation.
It's like, what?
No, what I was told was it won't work anymore.
Oh. So tell that to the millions of men that already have had it.
Yeah, it won't work if you cut me. I don't know if that's a black man thing. I don't know. But if you cut me, it's not gonna work. And I'm like, well, if it won't work anymore.
Yeah. It's like, well, I mean, it just, I don't know. So when you look at that issue, the role issue, it's almost like it takes away a certain, and I understand the life issue, when does life begin, and how do you protect the life of the unborn? But really, when you look at it, I'm like, well, that unborn child may not have access to health care. So, I mean, is that protecting him? That unborn child may have.
But just think this.
Is that protecting him? So it's just a little weird.
It's a little iffy, but you know, there's other cases with abortion where if you find out the child is going to be deathly ill, or if you find out the child is going to survive, but they won't ever walk, or they won't ever talk, or they're going to be, you know, severely handicapped. Now you're putting a burden on the family to bring a child into this world and have to carry the baby forever. So, I mean, like literally, you know, never walk, never do whatever. So that's a little bit like why that abortion issue is a little bit, it could be a little, I mean, it's a personal issue. But then, you know, I do know personally of people that have had abortions late, like 4 months, 5. But you know what I find interesting? That, you know, as you say, you got these conservative men on the court system making those decisions. But when it comes to pornography, they're really struggling to define pornography. So they're like, well, I don't really know what pornography, they're still struggling to really define pornography. And so it's like, really? So, because you know why? Because that's a male dominated thing.
Yeah.
So they don't even want to man pornography, but they don't mind manning, as you said, the female body part.
Yeah, the body, your body. So that's a concern. And like I said, the gay marriage issue, after there's so many people that have gotten married under the I forgot the name, the Oberfeld. Yeah. So there's so many people who have adopted children already. They've filed taxes. They've bought homes together. So if that's in jeopardy, then a lot of things are in jeopardy. Like what happens with how do you dissolve a marriage, that type of marriage? What do you do with the children? What do you do with the community
property, so health coverage,
taxes, probate? So this, like I said, I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. I'm glad I'm on the Supreme Court making these decisions, but these are all things that affect, even though it's not affecting your life specifically, because you may not have
you're in the privilege, you have privilege on that
one. Or you have affordable health care already, like I do through your employer. But these are things that affect daily who your children go to school with, how what your fellow parents, who your fellow parents are. It just affects you in subliminal ways. That's the best way.
There's a lot of cases going on now. You made me remember a couple that I think I could see in the future being issues, like same-sex bathrooms. I remember I was downtown eating and I went in the restaurant and I didn't know it was a gender-neutral bathroom. So I'm in the bathroom, you know, doing what we do. And a man walked in. I was like, what? You know, I started breaking. I was like, wait a minute. And then I looked on the door and it had both signs on it. So should males be allowed to use female bathrooms? What if I was a survivor of incest or being molested or something, and I see a man come in my only safe space in a public place, which is a woman's? There's right now in the school system, teachers are instructed that they can't tell parents if a child is wants to change their name. We had a student that changed. She didn't want to be called she anymore. She changed her name to a boy name, and we had to call her that. And we couldn't during parent-teacher conferences tell the parent that. So like, should I be allowed? And then my little ghetto self, I knew I would have forgotten, be like, Joey, I don't have a child named Joey. And I'd be like, oh shoot, you know, because I'm not supposed to tell the parent. Should schools be allowed to give kids condoms in school? I can see these things being constant arguments, because where does the right of a student lie, of a minor? The rights of a minor within a school system, because when a child is a minor and they go in the school system, they become the child of the school. The parent is not there. So it's really you're in they call it being in place of the parent. So you really make decisions in the school, and you kind of don't consider the parent when you're talking to the kid or telling them to do this or telling them to do that. And so I could see these being big cases. Like I could see in the future stuff with gender neutral, like he, she, you know, getting rid of he and her, you know, getting rid of those pronouns. That's becoming a big issue, getting rid of pronouns. The cases that I looked up, Tiff, about current cases, do you know you now can sue Apple for high prices?
Okay.
There's a case that was recently ruled in the Supreme Court that Apple users can sue Apple because their prices are astronomical. There was another case of where you can have inappropriate logo. They called it scandalous. That you can be like, they were originally banning people for trademarks that were the logo seemed like too sexual, maybe too explicit. Okay. And so they were banning you from getting a trademark.
Oh, wow.
With that. So now it went to the Supreme Court and you can't do it. It's unconstitutional. So now you can have basically a trademark for whatever you want. Gerrymandering, of course, has been in the system for a long time. There was another one. They're starting to rule for cases that kind of are against double jeopardy rules. You know, double jeopardy is you have a right, once you are convicted of a crime and you are forgiven, they now are kind of ruling in favor of you can be re-convicted for something, because what they said they were doing it because of the president's pardons that he's been doing recently. He's been pardoning criminals. So since he's been pardoning criminals, they're now allowing some of those criminals to be
I said, don't let that affect the rest of us.
No, I know, right? But they're starting to rule more in favor of some of the people that he's let off the hook can also be found criminal in other litigation. So I thought that was funny. And the other one, which I thought was really funny, was there was a case of, what's it called? Tyson Timms. He was selling heroin, and I think it was $400 worth of heroin. And so he got in trouble for that. And the state went after him for like all his possessions, basically, his inheritance, whatever money he had, his car, way over the value of $400.
Okay.
So it was an infraction of $400, and they went after. So it's the 8th Amendment violation that you cannot be excessively punished.
Okay.
So he was excessively fined.
Yeah, like, for $400. That's
$400 in heroin, and then you're taking I think they said he had a car that was valued at $42,000, and they took that, and they went after some insurance that he had or whatever, and he won because it was like excessively. So I thought that was some of the most recent ones. And the census question, I thought it was decided, but it's not decided yet. It was a case of, if you're an elite, the question on there is about your immigrant status. And I thought the court lost. I thought that it was ruled in favor of not having to put that on there. But what they said was, we're just going to return it to the lower court and let them explain more adequately why they want to know that question.
Okay. Okay.
So it still is a possibility that that question could wind up on the next census.
Wow.
Just like with the Obamacare, they haven't, while the people are rumoring to say that it looks like they're going to vote in favor of keeping that law on the books, the decision has not been written yet.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the one good thing about the Supreme Court, well, there's a few good things, but the one of the good things about the Supreme Court is that they're immune, or they're supposed to be immune from political influence, because they serve there for the rest of their lives. So
Right.
they're not in jeopardy of being thrown off if they made the wrong decision, and they're not in jeopardy of being, they're secure, so they can always make the decision based on the law and how they feel.
Supposedly, but that's why there was a big issue recently with Amy Coney Barrett taking pictures with the president. She was taking pictures with him and attended some event with him, and that's like you don't really see, you wouldn't see, justices and stuff kind of mingling with the other branches of government, because it looks like you'll be influencing, they'll be influencing you. And she was specifically picked, they think, for Roe v. Wade and for the election issues.
Yeah, but I mean, I've seen pictures of RBG.
You bet against her, yes. But if you go on a show, it's fine. But would you want to see the president
posing at a party,
posing at pictures and stuff at an event? Do you want to see something like it? Looks a little weird.
Yeah, and it's hard to take away the human element, because when you're friends with someone or when you're cozy with someone, it's like, well, can I really be objective? And that's why in the job that we do, if we have cases of a person that we know, or even a neighbor.
Yeah, you absolutely cannot.
You do not even know them. It's like, well, can you really be objective? And so it's not a good look, and it's hard to take that human element away from it. So I understand that.
Well, the last one I read recently, I thought was interesting. I think that would be something we need as people of color, was discrimination of juries. So there was a case where the guy was tried for murder, I think 6 times, and he's been in prison for like 22 years already. But he's granted a new trial. And
is that the Netflix series? The one that has the Netflix?
I don't know the name of the guy. I just looked up. I don't know that he's granted a new trial now, because they ruled that the jury could have been discriminatory toward him. So after 20-something years, he's now granted a new trial.
I think that it's a Netflix series on him. If it's trial 4, if it's the same guy that was convicted of murdering a police officer.
So I think that's interesting, because we do know that a jury is supposed to be of your peers.
Yeah.
That's why I say, and that's why you have a lawyer and they have a lawyer. But again, it goes back to the other video. We were talking about competent lawyers. If you have an incompetent lawyer and they not really lawyering for you, you could wind up with a jury of people that are biased. I mean, you're not supposed to, if you're being tried for murdering a cop, you shouldn't have anybody on your jury who had a husband whose cop was murdered. Or a cop that was murdered.
Police officers, to me, it's like, okay, they're definitely going to be biased if you are a police officer or former. And because certain things you just can't take the human element out.
Right. So I think we talked about a lot of cases. If it really is interesting to look up. Constitution, while it is an old document, it's a live, living, breathing document. And it is active in our lives. As we say, politics is everywhere. There's nothing that the Constitution does not affect, because you actually could win your case. If you have a case against you, or if you put a case against somebody, you could actually win your case based on a previous ruling of a case, or based on you presenting and them saying, but it's mainly 14th Amendment, 2nd Amendment, 1st Amendment, 4th Amendment, those rights being violated. And what I love is that there's plenty of good short videos out, and you can go. You can go to the website. I think it's the U.S. Constitution website to see what the newest cases are on the docket, just to see what's going on.
Yeah, and we'll have some videos in our under our playlist, so you can always check out our playlist. Usually we put videos there based on the subjects we're speaking about, so you can always go watch they're not long videos. We usually keep them pretty short. So I mean, it's plain and simple English or explanation. So
Tim, you out of your feelings now?
I'm still tired. I want to go back to sleep, but I'm feeling better.
Okay, good. We happy, guys. We happy for her. All right, guys, stay tuned with us. Remember to share the video, like, comment, all that, blah, blah, blah. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and of course here on YouTube, right?
Yep.
Gmail, right? 2polychicks, the number 2 polychicks@gmail.com for any questions. And we're gonna do a Q&A soon because I was asked about it. So we're gonna form some questions. You got questions that you want answered. We're gonna do a Q&A soon. She doesn't know, so that's why her Facebook's like that, because I didn't tell her.
No, I was gonna say, well, we'll speak off camera, but I was gonna say we need to start doing the Q&As and the special guests that we're planning on having. So
yeah. All right, so is that all, folks?
That's it.
All right, bye, guys.
Have a